and bonjour. So let's see here. Copy link. Paste link. Okay, so there is the link in the chat for you as well. So let's see here. Just trying to make my screen where I can see everything. Okay, so I am Emily Burrus. I teach 9th through 12th French at Pisgah High School in Haywood County. So Western North Carolina, we touch Tennessee. So when she said I came the furthest, that's where I came from last night. These are the resources that I use, and then I'm so excited to learn from others because, as was said in our morning session, I learn more from other teachers than anywhere else. Sharing is caring. So on the right-hand side, these are the sources that some have been mentioned, but these are the sources that I've had the most success with. 7 jours sur la planète, if you're unfamiliar with it, it comes with leveled activities. So it has pre-made teacher guides, pre-made student worksheets. And these are from using the European levels A2 through B2. So having those, you can adapt to any level really. And they have great, there's 2 articles that are launched every Friday, current events. And they have the subtitled videos, which is also beneficial to see the French as you're hearing it, because we know typically the reading picks up a little bit quicker than the hearing. And then France Info, it's a great news source, but it also breaks down the French news from different regions in France, as well as d'outre-mer. So getting those other perspectives of not just in, the hexagon. So it's a great way to see the different news and to access that. La Presse is out of Quebec. So another great way, it's international news, but then they have the, perspective of Canadian news presenters. This is an area that I need to work more on myself, but BBC Afrique, it's a good starting point, but it is not, obviously it's from the BBC, so it's not the best. So I've got to work for that. So I've learned some resources today that, so different resources that you can get authentically from Africa, not just from the BBC's perspective. For the 2 ladies that just walked into the room, so we've got, this is the link for this presentation. If you want the bit.ly link, I'm sure they'll email it out because I'm all about sharing. And the 2 news sources that we've touched on before you walked in, so 7 jours sur la planète, having the 2 articles released every Friday with pre-made teacher guides, pre-made student worksheets. France Info, just a landing page for news from around the French-speaking world, as well as from the overseas departments. And then the last one I just mentioned was BBC Afrique. And obviously that's an area I need to work better on, getting news from more authentic sources and not with a British spin. And then the next one has been mentioned, but it is worth re-mentioning many times over. Un jour en actu. It's my favorite. I love the Un jour en question. I love those videos. And you can slow it down in the settings of where the gear is. You can put the speed of the video playback slower to where you can use it with any level. We giggle a little bit at how it sounds whenever you have, video that's slowed, how that speech sounds. So we giggle about it, but it makes it more comprehensible. And of course, that is appreciated anywhere we can do that, make it more accessible. And they have news, and the questions, if you're unfamiliar with it, they come from kids in France. So it's questions that are asked by kids for kids. I can't recommend it enough. And then 20 minutes, so the daily newspaper given for free to commuters in France. The idea is that you can read it in 20 minutes cover to cover. So that's another great resource. Then also, on the left-hand side, so these are the payant. There's a lot that you can do with them for free. Here, I brought one of them. They're done by Mary Glasgow, the little scholastic readers. And when I pull these out, like whenever I can get funding and use these in class, kids get so excited because they remember using these scholastic magazines when they were kids in, their elementary school days. So having these, they come with teacher guides and resources online with audio clips and videos. That is a paid. And then already mentioned Petit Continent, Mon Continent L'actu. Those are leveled for, they were designed to promote French children to read more. And so the company that produces all of those is Playback. And they're aimed at different age groups. So there's a subscription service that's offered, but you can do a lot with what's free on the site, because I haven't paid for what I've used. And then Le Journal des Enfants, that is out of Alsace. So again, it is a newspaper online for children. So again, encouraging reading for French children, but we can use that as French teachers because it's already leveled to an interest level for a student. And then towards proficiency, the link that's provided will take you to her free units that are available. But she has taken a comprehensible input, and there's a lot of free stuff on the site, but there is stuff available on the website for purchase, and then she has a teachers pay teacher account. And so with both of those, the free resources that she has, she gave a lot during the pandemic. She released all of them for free, and they are leveled at such a comprehensible input, and she releases them like for the year. So that's a great comprehensible news. And then Le Parisien, this is links to their Twitter, but it's just their infographics. So as mentioned in the last session, infographics are such a hook. It makes the news more attainable. It makes it visual. It is a great way to engage learners and to make them think about the news, but using that as a visual starting piece. There's always going to be the images. There's going to be data, statistics, so things that hook kids and it makes them ask questions. So that's just their Twitter feed for the infographic. So you can go through and pick out whatever unit you're teaching and it will be there already. So these are the ones that I've had the most success with. Whenever it was said earlier, I learned more from other teachers than anywhere else. So I have I made a Padlet that now it's your turn to share. So let me paste this in the chat. So here's the link, and I am going to stop sharing this tab. And okay. Oh no. I've not used Zoom in a moment here. Here we go. Nope. There we go. Does that just do the?
Can you click on this one? Yeah, can you click on that?
This one?
Padlet, yeah, right there, and then click on the link.
If that's, will it take them to? Oh, okay, I see. They're seeing what I see. Okay, perfect. So I made this Padlet for you to add news that you've had success to, and I made it as a map to where we can see where the news is coming from. So the ones that I started with, obviously all in France, but my hope is that after this session, people will keep adding to this Padlet. And I just tagged where the publications originate from. So to me, I think sharing is absolutely the #1 way to learn. And these are the ones that the Parisien is probably the one that is more for intermediate learners. The other ones are probably too advanced for level 1 or 2 class, but if you have an honors class, they're great. So feel free to add to this. I will never delete this, so feel free to add to it. And then with current events. So this is how I've used it in my classroom. If you click on the worksheet on the presentation, it will take you to make a copy of this for you, so you can make a copy of what I've used. And we used this in my classroom before the pandemic, and they would do a presentation. So this is the copy of the text that I put in Google Classroom for them. So choose an event, any Francophone country, we have to review. Okay, I don't want you to do the news from the United States, which I know you're interested in seeing how it's being commented on in other French-speaking countries, but with just focusing on the French-speaking countries. So it goes through the who, what, where, when, how, what questions that they might have, vocabulary that they've learned, words that they've had to look up to make, the article make sense to them, and then discussion questions that they want to have. And so we did this before the pandemic. So I had an honors class that in that 2020 year before everything shut down, and my students were reporting on the pandemic as it got closer to us. And that was fascinating, but also a little depressing. So we picked one day that it could only be happy news. And there was some museum that had closed, and they had put penguins in the museum. And so I had one student, she always chose an animal article. So anything that she would present in class had to be about an animal or animal rights or something to that effect. So it helped them choose the news that they were interested in. And then they were picking up vocabulary perspectives from that. And then Music Mercury, I'm a firm believer that you need to use music in your classroom. It is a huge hook. If you haven't used music, you need to. I'm also giving a shameless plug for Mane Musicale. So if you're familiar with it, it is an amazing invention from 2 French teachers in Maine, and we've got a huge team now that run it. So it's formatted after the NCAA Sweet 16 basketball bracket, and they have chosen songs representing all different French-speaking countries, and they do double headers. And we have just finished today the premiere tour, and then we're starting on the deuxième tour. And so the students are from all 50 states, all the Canadian provinces, several different countries. This year we welcome New Zealand and Australia into the fold. And the students, instead of a basketball match, they're voting for which song that they like the best. And there is all kinds of free resources that teachers have created, highlighting these different countries that speak French that these artists are from. So I just have to give a plug for that. It's amazing. But for Music Mercury, it's news, but it's about music. So I have an example lesson. So that Nearpod you can edit. It's from one of the top hits that was this summer by a day. The name, my brain went completely blank, but click on the Nearpod and you can find out. But I included the law that the French have about how much percentage of music has to be from French speakers. And I pull up what the top hits are, just like Google top hits in France. And then they can see like, oh, hey, Harry Styles is on this. I listen to that. So it starts further conversation and connections that music is, a huge way to connect learners. And I use different news articles, and it's surprising when it's something they're interested in, how much they will engage with it. So the articles that I've included in the Nearpod were about the release of her album, how she came to Nashville to record, and how she did different sessions that she did to get these, expert banjo players to play on her album. So it was just a way to connect. And where I'm from in North Carolina is a rural area. So throw bluegrass out there and you get a lot more people that are excited. So just knowing your audience and what their interests are. And then obviously our global competencies. So using the news to investigate the world, recognize perspectives, communicate ideas effectively, and take action. So those are different ways to think about the news. Like, this is what we should be doing to make more global competent learners. We want them to go out into the world, not only speaking French, but being good global citizens. And I'm sure, like me, you use your classroom as a platform to help with that, and the news will do that effectively. And so with our discussion, so how have you used current events and authentic news sources in the language classroom? I want to hear from you. So what have been your success stories, either in the room or in the Zoom? Feel free to unmute yourself.
I think students really enjoy finding something themselves and using it that way, of the presentational mode of presenting an article, anything, limiting them in the first place as to here's where you can look, because if not, they may, you know, I tell them, don't go to Le Monde at this level, you're limited to these news resources, because Le Monde is higher and you're not quite ready for that yet. But limiting them and allowing them to present on whatever they want, and then they have to ask one question. Sometimes that becomes three, but so giving them more ownership in their own learning really makes a big difference.
And I totally agree with you. Like you said, for lower level, novice, low, middle, high, give them like some clear parameters, but then give them the freedom to choose, and then to compare what they like in English and, you know, in French as well. Especially very helpful with our Asian population, or you know, the students from Africa as well. I like that approach.
And giving them those boundaries and then free reign. Yeah, it's amazing. It's impactful to do that. Are there any in our Zoom audience? How have you used current and authentic news in your classrooms?
Well, I just sent something through the chat, but I only teach level 1, and I don't, that's kind of why I'm here, is how can I incorporate news for my novice low, novice mid, hopefully by the end of the year, novice high learners. But I'm totally going to share these resources with my upper level compatriots at school when we get back on Monday. And I am actually having my students purchase that Scholastic magazine for level 1. So hopefully we'll get some of that graphic organizer, what, when, where, who, using those articles that are kind of geared towards their level.
And the articles that they pick, so this is the latest one that came, and this is for the level 3s, but this is something that I regret. This summer I was in Paris working for CIEE, and they had this bubble pit, and so it's pop air, and it's this where you have like, it connects it to Emily in Paris, which everyone knows is popular on Netflix, definitely not school appropriate, but they're watching it anyway. And so we can like hook it in. And in the Nearpod lesson that I shared, I think at the end of it, I included like a bonus. So it was Comme en Française. It's a YouTube lady that does, she teaches French in chunks and does popular event, like current events. And so she did an episode on like what Emily did wrong. And so this summer I was like, I'm also Emily à Paris, but I know what I'm doing. Like I will say bonjour when I enter someplace. So it's always fun to make those connections where you can. I was in Paris. I did the first session to answer the question in the chat. So there's like also in this, just coming back to this, they have Nettoyer la plage. So this is in our, like a little blurb about Le Côté d'Ivoire. So it has different aspects in the magazine, not just France. Jean Sauve-Pompier. So there's just lots of different things in here, and I'll pass this down if y'all want to look at this. So we've also got the next question. How does teaching the news from the French-speaking world help engage our learners? And I think we've kind of started to answer that. If we're letting them choose the current event, then they're invested in it. If they get ownership of their own learning, they're engaged far more than if you say, this is what we're doing today. But any other comments or ideas from the group?
I just wanted to say, all depends on the level of the class that you have, because I can give an example. When I was teaching French 4 or French literature, I had a class of kind of immersion student. So the background in French was high. So you can give them a choice, like you say, to pick whatever they want in the current event. And they are eager to explain themselves, like argument on whatever topic they received or they picked. And then everything was engaged, which is different with French 1 or French 2. You can tell they have idea, they want to say something, but they don't know how to say it. So it blocked the discussion completely. Not completely, but it doesn't help with the discussion. Yes, I use discussion, but it's different from level to level. The engagement and then the outcome is different.
And you're sparking an idea for me so I've used a lot of chat mats. So as we mentioned already, Manamee's account, I made the chat mats that you might, if you participate, that you've seen. So those, I just made them look pretty. Someone else came up with the words, but how to talk about songs. And I've done chat mats for home units and for restaurants on how to order. But it would be amazing if we made a chat mat for how to talk about the news, to where we could give them the functional chunks they need to start those things. And then we can help them along in the discussion. The English teachers down the hall from me do those, I forgot what they call them, but where they put all the chairs in the room in a circle. And then they have them all, like, they have to share, is the Socratic method where you
Socratic seminars.
Socratic
Yes.
seminars.
Thank you. So if we took that kind of idea and gave them a chat mat, it might be a way to help them just make that extra little bit that they need to be comprehensible. I know with the chat mats that I made a landing page for my learners in like a Bitmoji classroom. And so I have the bracket behind them, they can click on the vote box, and then the other slides, it's like different chat mats that I've included. But I recorded myself pronouncing them and made them as little audio files. So in Google, you can upload audio files. And I've put it where they can click play and hear the French, hear me say it, to where they can kind of practice on their own before they go to say it in the classroom. So that's always just like that little extra help. So I've done that before. So that, I think that's something I'm gonna try to do, is make a chat mat for it. That's a good idea.
And I just want to make a comment on the circle for the Socratic seminar. It is hard because the class now are like 33, 36 students. There's no way to get that move. I remember when I had 20 students, I would do that easily. But, and then that's advanced class. Usually advanced classes, they don't have a lot of students. But the French 1 and 2 is where all the students are. And it's usually 33, 36. It's hard to make that circle thing and then work with students. So I just wanted to add that.
Yes, thank you for adding that. Any other comments on this one before we move on? And I put my email in the chat. Any of those things that I've mentioned that you want, just send me an email. I don't check my email outside of my contracted hours. I try to set that boundary, but I will check at 8 o'clock Monday morning, and I will send it to you during my planning period or lunch. So just email away and I will gladly share anything I have. I feel like, again, I've learned so much and I've relied so much on other teachers. I'm currently the only French teacher in my county. I am from an era, I'm 39 years old. When I went through my elementary school, I had a French teacher, and I took French from kindergarten all the way through 11th grade. And then my senior year, I would have been an independent advanced placement, and I did not have that ambition as a senior in high school. So I didn't take it my senior year, but then obviously I continued it in college. And we don't have that anymore. Every time a French teacher retires, they use that budget allotment for a reading program or a math program, which are needed, but it is such a detriment in our county. In the last round of budget cuts, my counterpart at the rival high school, the one I actually graduated from, they had, she was certified to teach English, and so she got to keep a job teaching, but I'm currently the only French teacher. And we were going to have the seniors that wanted to finish their French come to me to take it, but it whittled down with schedule changes to just one student, and she didn't want to come by herself. So that I would not mind at all to teach both schools. It's just depending on what happens. In our community, I don't know if it's made the news anywhere else, but our paper mill has just said without much warning, they're closing in June. And that is 800 to 1,200 jobs. So our community has been hit with this huge blow. So we'll see what happens. Stay tuned. But anyway, that just goes to show, like, I tried to make these connections with the world and get them interested, because I want them to see, you know, you can move outside of Haywood County. You don't have to stay here your whole life like your parents have. You can use your French to travel and see the world. And moving on to my last question. So how do articles, headlines, news videos, and infographics, how can they help students develop their global competencies? And I keep hitting on those because I think they're so important. Investigating the world, recognizing perspectives, communicating those ideas effectively, and take action. And the action piece can look like anything. It could be maybe they read how another country does something and they want to try that, or there's a movement somewhere else that they want to piggyback on and bring to our school or our area. So how do they help your learners? Feel free to unmute yourself. I think sometimes just playing the news. I admitted this in the last class, and I'm not proud of this, but my students and I were very interested in the Queen's passing. And I was like, how can I make this to where we could see the Queen's funeral? So we watched the Queen's funeral on a French news service. And I was like, I'm wasting class time to do this, but it's in the target language, and they were all engaged, and it started a lot of conversation. So that happened to be during my honors period. So the conversation was better. If it had been a level 1 class, I would have never done it, but because it was the learners that I had and we were interested in it. So, I mean, you could always do that, you know, stream in news. I haven't mentioned it, but we have lots of student athletes in Haywood County, and I'm sure you do as well. And so using the sports news, it's still news. What I love about Meta Musicale is some teacher with much more time than I have looked through all the NCAA players and found all the French speaking ones, and put it into a slideshow. So I printed those and put them on the lockers outside of my classroom, and then made these little speech bubbles that says, you know, je parle français, on parle français, nous parlons français. And it has like the player's picture, the school that they go to, and where they're from, what French speaking country. And it started a lot of conversations as people come down the hall. They're like, hey, that's my team, or that's my homeboy. And I didn't know that he spoke French. So it started a larger conversation with people that aren't in my French class. They're like, why you got all these basketball players out here? So it starts that, you know, hook for them to be like, oh, okay, so if he speaks French, I'm doing all right. So that's always good.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful because generally the American closed society, really closed society. And then showing the news from different part help students see that outside of the United States, life is this way because history has been already messed up. like I'm from Africa, so they assume I live with monkey or whatever next to my house. And then when you say you have those beautiful houses the same way here and there, they're like, oh, really? So yes, the images, some images just show the bad thing. That when you put the news there, it helped them see, even if you're talking about Paris, they didn't go to Paris, but when you put the news, like when the Notre Dame got burned, so I was in New York, so I talk a lot about 9/11 because I was there, but I was able to show them this is what is going on there, and then it's so similar, the effect that the community had with the same with 9/11. So it started discussion, so they can see those that had the image, or they knew they were, some of them were not even born, but they can relate to that. And then when you bring it to Africa and show something going on, like we talk about election, you can show them this is the election here and this is the election there. And now, especially with this retirement thing and in France, or where we had a terrorist attack in France and then a terrorist attack here, the kids can now see, oh, it's not only here. So the news piece is always good. And then you talk about the basketball. Now they're talking about the bracket. I don't really know exactly how that system works, but I let the kids pick the subject, and that's the subject they pick. Madam Kunde, can we discuss the bracket? So, and then I wanted to bring that. They are so moved to because this is what they like, playing sport and stuff. So it's something they like, and then they want to talk about it. So it was great. It was great. And then it's always good to use those information from outside.
Yes. One idea, this is not my idea, but it was presented at Flank. And so this teacher each day chooses 1 or 2 headlines and writes them on the board. She has students listen as as she reads them aloud, and then do like a think, pair, share. So she'll have in pairs, the students look at the words to discover the meanings. They may already know it, or it's a loan word or cognate. And then the students share the ideas with the large group. So that's where the share part comes in. And then if the headline talks about a particular country, she'll find the country on the map and then start those, comprehensible questions like, what is the capital? What language do they speak? Who is their president or leader? And then these are great moments where we can show students we are eternal learners. There's so many French-speaking countries in the world. I don't know all the heads of state. I fully admit that. So it's, oh, well, let's find this out. Let's, research who this is or who can find it first. And so it's a great opportunity to show, we all are still learners. And then some headlines may lead to further discussions and connections. And as was mentioned earlier this morning, whatever you're already teaching in your curriculum, you can find that in the news. Whatever grammatical structure, whatever word, whatever culture you might be doing, whatever topic, you can always find an article about it. So it's a way to connect the two, where it's like, oh, well, we learned this about, or, with Mani Musicale, I keep coming back to that. With all the countries that are involved, it's like, well, let's look at the news from this artist's country today. So it's just a good way to further those connections. And then you just decide what you want to go with in your classroom. I took so many notes earlier today. I know they're going to share all of our resources, but the one thing that I really want to work on myself is getting more from authentic, like news from the source in Africa. I've written down a few things today, but using the BBC Afrique, it's a great way to start, but it's not. The next time I teach an honors class, I'm using the rapping news. I was so floored by that. I thought it was amazing. Okay, and I think I've got 6 minutes left. Are there any questions? I might not have the answer, but someone else in the room might have an answer.
thinking about your question for instead of BBC Afrique. I know I've gone to Jeune Afrique. That's one place. What I've also discovered is actually looking up news for each individual country actually works best because they each have their own news sources and some of them are just easier to find and so I think that may be, and as you said, the France Info going there and looking specifically for the drum is also helpful, but unfortunately I found the best place is to really look up each individual country specifically.
With whenever we did Manet 2 years ago, there was an artist from Reunion Island and students.
There.
Okay, so Michael Pouvin. So the students, I mistakenly gave him the nickname of Pretty Boy. And he's very beautiful. And I was like, I couldn't think of his name really quickly. And I was like, Pretty Boy, and that stuck. And so the students started like messaging him, like, you know, like giving shout outs on the comments on Instagram. And it was a huge connection. And they're like, did you know so-and-so's happened in Reunion? And it started this conversation because they liked this artist from this country, then they were more interested in the country. And the scenery in the music video was gorgeous. And they're like, is all of this country this beautiful? So it just started the conversation. So you never know what you might throw out there. Well, I throw a lot at my students and I'm like, something will hook someone. And inevitably, the thing that I think won't land will land. So it's just giving a variety of things.
Yeah, can I add something for Mr.
Please.
David Ruffel? Bonjour, Monsieur David.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. J'avais une question pour vous. On parle ici de classes qui peuvent être éliminées pour le français. Si l'ambassade pouvait venir chaque année avant le début de l'année académique vers le 16 août, ici en Caroline du Nord, il y a une réunion pour tous les professeurs et souvent on invite les gens pour venir parler. Si la France ou l'envoyé culturel, c'est comment on dit, les consulats, la personne qui est chargée pour la culture pouvait demander à state, je ne sais pas ce qui est en charge de ça, qu'une personne peut venir parler ou informer les gens sur l'importance de la langue française dans l'école. Ça sera une bonne chose. Vous n'êtes nulle part. Depuis que je suis en train d'enseigner, je ne vous vois pas. Et ce n'est pas bien parce que l'ambassade de l'Allemagne, ils ont des délégués qui viennent dans des écoles chaque année et ils envoient des bourses pour les enfants et tout. Ils viennent avec des livres, quelques documents à utiliser dans la classe. Je ne vois pas ça avec l'ambassade de la France. Ça peut aussi motiver la direction générale de l'éducation ici à mettre des moyens ou des paquets pour la langue française. Parce que chaque école est en train de perdre le professeur de français. Et ce n'est pas bien pour la France.
Alors, je vais vous répondre. Donc, cette personne qui est en charge, c'est bien moi. Donc, je suis arrivé en poste il y a 18 mois maintenant. Donc, vous savez qu'on met beaucoup de choses en place via Washington, qu'on essaie de transmettre le plus possible d'informations et le plus possible de ressources. J'imagine que vous suivez l'ensemble de nos dispositifs qui sont sur le site frenchculture.org. Vous suivez, j'imagine aussi, vous êtes inscrite, j'imagine, sur la liste de diffusion que nous publions chaque mois qui s'appelle Southeast Education. J'imagine que vous suivez ça aussi.
Non.
Alors, voilà. Donc, je vais peut-être redire cet après-midi quels sont l'ensemble de nos dispositifs et tous les moyens que nous mettons à votre disposition pour vous soutenir dans vos actions et pour vous soutenir pour soutenir l'enseignement du français dans le Sud-Est, mais nous en avons de très, très, très nombreux. Et encore une fois, je vous rappelle donc le site frenchculture.org qui est au cœur de notre dispositif et qui rassemble absolument tout. Et puis, une lettre d'information mensuelle que nous faisons localement depuis Atlanta, qui s'appelle Southeast Education. Donc, je vais vous redire ça tout à l'heure cet après-midi. Ensuite, concernant ma propre capacité à me déplacer dans l'ensemble des 6 États du Sud-Est, elle est limitée jusqu'à maintenant. Pour la raison suivante, c'est qu'en 2020, jusqu'en 2020, nous avions un VI éducation qui était donc l'adjoint de l'attaché culturel que je suis désormais depuis 18 mois. Ce poste nous a été supprimé en 2020, mais à force de lutte et de force de conviction, nous avons convaincu le ministère des Affaires étrangères de créer un poste VI éducation qui va donc, on est en train de le recruter au début septembre prochain. Ce qui va nous permettre localement de pouvoir, cette personne et moi, nous déplacer plus souvent pour venir vous rencontrer parce que je suis absolument d'accord avec vous que c'est absolument nécessaire d'être aussi sur le terrain, de aussi venir vous rencontrer. Mais sachez bien que c'est ni une absence de volonté de notre part, que depuis 18 mois, il est plus difficile de nous déplacer. C'est simplement un manque de moyens. On s'est battu là et on a obtenu ce poste. Donc, il y aura à partir de septembre quelqu'un qui, à Atlanta, sera mon adjoint ou mon adjointe et qui aura pour seule et unique mission d'être sur les sujets éducatifs et d'être au plus près du terrain et au plus près de vous. Donc, j'espère qu'à partir de septembre, on aura ce lien beaucoup plus intime et proche et efficace auprès de vous. Mais encore une fois, j'insiste sur le fait que l'ambassade à laquelle j'appartiens met en place de très, très, très nombreux dispositifs au niveau fédéral que nous relayons localement tout le temps. Par exemple, encore vendredi, nous avons envoyé un e-blast pour parler des nouvelles opportunités pour former des nouvelles générations de professeurs de français. Vous avez probablement entendu parler de l'initiative French for All. Si ce n'est pas le cas, là encore, il est très, très important que je vous redise cet après-midi quels sont l'ensemble des dispositifs de l'ambassade qui sont à votre service.
Merci, merci. En tout cas, c'est important de connaître tout ça. La diffusion, peut-être c'est la diffusion, le passage de l'information n'est pas…
Écoutez, j'aurais tendance à dire on a des progrès à faire, peut-être encore en diffusion, mais nous diffusons beaucoup, beaucoup, beaucoup également. Et donc, ce qui manque peut-être, c'est que de vous d'informer régulièrement l'ensemble des professeurs de français de toutes ces ressources et de tous ces liens. Mais encore une fois, ici dans le Sud-Est, ce n'est pas d'ailleurs le cas dans toutes les circonscriptions aux États-Unis, nous avons une lettre éducative mensuelle que nous fabriquons, nous, notre équipe, à votre destination. Alors, peut-être je fais un petit sondage. Toutes les 5 dans cette pièce, est-ce que vous recevez la lettre d'information Southeast Education mensuellement?
Oui.
Merci.
Sur Internet.
Mail.
Est-ce que donc les personnes qui sont dans cette pièce, est-ce que vous recevez cette lettre d'information?
Oui, on les reçoit. Oui, oui.
Moi, non.
D'accord. Voilà. Donc certains d'entre vous sont bien au courant, d'autres non. Donc, je pense que la séance de tout à l'heure peut servir aussi, de mon côté et de votre côté, à vous réinformer à ce niveau-là.
Merci. Okay, and I think that's all the time we have. So refer back to your emails on how to rejoin after the lunch break. And thank you for choosing to join my session today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Emily. See you this afternoon after the break.
Luncheon conversation in 1005.